Actually going to record. There we go. All right, so welcome everyone to the third online training for the WGDR WGDH new programmer training process. This is where the roads have diverged. So most of you who are here tonight are intentionally here to learn how to do a remote show, because that's going to be the main method by which you submit your shows. Or we actually have some current programmers and people who are going to be doing hybrid shows. So people thinking ahead already that they're mostly going to be live, but they're going to be wanting to put in an evergreen show or a show while they're on vacation. So we appreciate you thinking that far ahead already with your eagerness to make good radio with us and yeah, be here tonight to learn how to do a remotely made show. So if you're in the right place, we will keep going with the night. The agenda is pretty straightforward. First off, I will, in a second, I'll turn off the PowerPoint here because we're going to be a small enough group that I want to do introductions, especially because we've got a co-presenter tonight with me, David Furland, who was a longtime GDR staffer, mostly in operations and programming, I think, right, David? That was your two major areas of this, not even small areas, major areas of the station. But he was single-handedly the one in charge of converting nearly everyone who stayed with us during COVID from doing exclusively live shows to learning how to do it remotely. So, you know, no pressure there. There was just a global pandemic raging and we had to totally change everything that happened with the station normally there. So he's dusting off those skills and bringing them back for us tonight to show you all how to do this and to do it without much stress either. We've actually retained, as you guys know, making remote shows. So we've gotten pretty good at it. And David actually is a remote programmer himself. So he's got multiple hats tonight and will be showing us the ropes there. So after a quick round of introductions, so David can put some names and faces tonight, we'll hand the microphone right over to David. And he's going to show us the ropes of Audacity and how he constructs his actual show. So it's a real live process. And then the last bit of the night, we'll go back to me and I'll show you how to take that finished product and bring it up into our uploading process. And it'll be handy for people watching tonight that if you already have your own way to kind of record a show and make a show file, you can kind of skip to the end part when we get there and see how to do these file uploading. So this is going to be meant as a multi-training tool after we've done the glories of recording here. So with that said, I'm just going to let somebody else in here. And we're going to open the mic here to do introductions. So again, you all know I'm Lou, the station manager. And I really appreciate all of the time that you all have given to the training process so far. And I'm so excited that after tonight, pretty much you'll be ready to rock with creating some remote shows and getting them right into the schedule. It's kind of like a slightly faster track than the live process. I'm going to hand it off to David Furland next to self-introduce himself a little bit more than my little minor introduction I gave. But David, I'll give it to you next.
David Furland. I produce the Trailing Edge program. That's Mondays, 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I've been producing my show remotely since 2017, fitting it into the robot, and a programmer since 1995. And let's see, go to the next person. ICM 96.
Les, that's you. I think your mic's... Oh, we can't hear you. I think your mic's a little bit, yeah. Oh, now you're muted again. I think it might be a mic issue on your end with your computer. We'll come back to you, Les. How about that? Yeah, I'm gonna, just for Hollywood Squares for where I am, we'll take it to Peter next. Oh. All right, well, oh, there he is. Hey, Peter.
I'm sorry, whoops. I managed to turn everything on and off several times. Excuse me, I'm kind of an idiot with this stuff. My name is Peter. I do Spanning the Chasm with a gentle dose of skepticism, sometimes a savage one. But I do it Sunday 2 to 4. And I'm here to actually learn from David because I have to do an evergreen show and I just haven't got an evergreen show, and that's why I'm here. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
Next person.
Go ahead and pick the next person to introduce.
Somebody showed a beautiful landscape. It looked like the Blue Mountains of Australia, but just that person.
Hi, everybody. I'm Emma. I just got home from work, so I'm just feeding my animals and running around my house. I am going to be a new programmer on Sunday nights, I think from 7 to 9, starting at the end of May. And I'm sorry, I missed what the prompt is for us introducing ourselves.
It's just a quick introduction. You already did it. Well done.
Me.
And feel free to pick another person who hasn't gone yet from the Hollywood Squares here.
Okay. How about Maria?
Hi, I'm Maria, and I'm so excited to be doing this show, and I'm so scared of the technology. So I'm really hoping I get all the answers I need here tonight. Thank you in advance. How
We'll do our best.
Damien.
Hey everybody, yeah, Damian Taylor, new programmer. I think my slot is Sundays 6 to 7, pretty sure. And yeah, I'm just here to learn as much as I can and to meet some new people. And I'm super excited. I had my first training the other night. It was interesting, but looking forward to taking this as far as I can. And I will pass it to, oh boy, who do I have here? Stephanie.
My video is glitching. Hold on. Sorry. I don't know why it's been doing that lately. Hi, everybody. I just beamed in a little bit late. Thanks for having me. Apparently, I'm glitching again. His name is Illuminations, Cultivating Consciousness, Compassion, Nature, and Worldwide Peace. And so I'm going to be talking about everything from nature to human rights to how music and plants influence consciousness. But what I won't be talking about is why my computer is glitching. So thanks for listening. Sorry if I missed what I'm supposed to be talking about.
You guys are all getting it great. Just pick a next person to go, Stephanie. Thank you.
Next up is, I apologize if I pronounce it wrong. Poa?
Boa rhymes with boa, like a feather boa. I am going to be covering the exceedingly narrow, rare topic of life and death, and interviewing people about dying and aging, or just dying in general. And I will be on Saturday mornings once a month, first Saturday at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And I will pass it to Daniel and Kellen.
Hello, I'm Kellen, and my dad Dan over here. We are going to be doing barn dance bluegrass on Fridays from 7 to 9. I'll be starting at the end of May, and I'll pass it to Tonio.
I'm Tonio Epstein. I do the Magical Mystery Tour on Friday mornings from 9 to 10:30. It's an interview show. I have been doing this remotely since the beginning of the pandemic. I have been using Adobe Audition as my editing program, but I'm not sure how long that will continue to work, especially when I switch computers. I have to get a new computer. So I've always had challenges with Audacity, and I've never really learned how to effectively use it. So that's why I'm here.
Great. Antonio, do you want to pick the next person to go?
Oh yeah. Let's see. Audrey.
Hi, I'm Audrey. I am hosting a weekly show Monday nights at 10 p.m. called All the Crooked Saints. And it is a show of cover songs, novelties, and weird noises in the middle of the night. And who else has not are we missing anyone?
I think we're waiting on, or Chris, I think hasn't gone yet. And Les, I think your mic is still not working on your computer there. We'll kick it to you, Chris, if you want to unmute and do a quick intro. There you go.
Yeah, sure. Hi, how you doing? My name is Chris Buckridge, and hi, how are you? I'm feeding my cats right now. I'm gonna have a radio show on Saturday mornings, and yeah, I'm excited to make radio in the studio and at home, and try to use as many mediums as I can possibly get my mitts on. And I will kick it over to the person whose name I forget, but who I hope's microphone is now working.
Yeah. Les, if it's not working, you can also type into the chat a quick intro of you and your show. I think we might need to do that. David Furlan will show us how Audacity is better than Zoom in all the ways. So hopefully it'll smoothly, I'm just kidding, David. We'll see, we'll compare. So before I hand it off to David, a couple of housekeeping items here. So again, he's gonna do a lot of screen sharing. So feel free to turn your videos off. Don't feel like you have to be on camera. Again, remember, we are recording it as well. So if you need to leave at any time, feel free to drop out and you can continue watching later. Use the chat or the little hand emoji raising thing to get my attention. I'll be monitoring that. And then I'll happily interrupt David so that he can answer any questions that might be popping up along the way. And then the last thing I'll just give some framing that there's some of you in here who are now slot sharers. So like, you're sharing Saturday night slots, for example, or excuse me, Saturday morning slots for these remote shows that are being submitted. So you're all going to be like show buddies in some ways, even though it's going to be remote. So you'll start to recognize each other's names and sometimes even potentially trade, the timing of the month, for example. If you're going to be away, you can do some, horse trading in that way. So you'll start to recognize your fellow remote making DJs in that kind of way as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it off to David to do his screen sharing and get right into showing you how he builds a show from home.
Okay, one last chance, Les. Oh, you're unmuted, but we can't hear you. Okay.
Volume, could he check his volume?
One day. Okay, good to see everybody. Thanks very much, David. My show has been running on the robot since 2017, and I have most of my experience is in the Air Studio. So it was pretty different. What we're not going to do at home is try and recreate the Air Studio experience where you can troubleshoot problems real time with a big control board. It's great fun to equalize a lot of different audio types and sources in the control board mixer in the Air Studio. And that's not what we're going to do at all. We're going to build a quilt, if you will. Okay, starting off with host is it's disabled participant screen sharing.
Sorry, David. Now you try again. I just changed it.
Okay. Okay. What we're going to start off with is the first 2 minutes of my radio program from Monday afternoon. This is obviously the station's archive. So here it is, 3:59, almost. And give me a thumbs up, Lou, if the audio doesn't come through. If it does come through. It's okay? Okay.
This is WGDR.
Okay, this is the robot at 4 p.m. sharp. The robot is never late. At the top of the hour and at the end of your hour, it's never late. There's a paid underwriting announcement. There's 2 of them in front of my show. And the legal station ID. All 3 of which equal about 52 seconds. So my program starts actually not at 4, but at 4:52. Some programmers like to do all that legal and paid announcement stuff on their own, arrange with Lou about whether, so it can be accomplished consistently throughout. And so there's the 52 seconds.
Hello and welcome to the Trailing Edge, a weekly check on 7 short climate news and commentary programs from nonprofit podcast and community broadcast media, many from the Pacifica Radio Network. I'm your host and selector, David Furlan. Following each of the 7 short news and commentary programs is The Other Side of the Story, Trailing Edge Music. And thank you for listening to this hour of Central Vermont Community.
Okay, so that is the intro. I have set up a particular challenge for myself because I have spoken word on MP3s and music back to back. So I have some special volume considerations to consider. Okay, that's the intro. And here we are. Whoops. Okay. I've created a folder with all my files amassed all in one place. These you can see here are all my spoken word files. I've got like 7, plus I've got my 2 pre-made intros that I've made with my microphone here. That's another workshop. The music files are all here. These are all songs I've selected for my show and are going to go, I'm going to arrange them all. And you can see all the various formats. These are all the actual files, not stream links or database links or anything like that. It's actual files. The process of me building my show is my own. Your process is going to be different. It's going to be your own. I build it this way. But I do use all the tools that you're going to need and not many others. So of the hundreds of tools in Audacity, I only use half a dozen, but I use them a lot. Okay, so the first thing to do is to put all the files in Audacity. And to do that, I grab the first one and drop it onto the icon, and it opens up Audacity. There it is. There's my first file. And there's my first file right there. And that's my Lalo Schifrin. Whoops, that's loud. Excuse me. Mission Impossible theme, the beginning of my show. 2 things about this. The yellow line indicates the track, and the blue part indicates the audio. Those are 2 separate things. The track is like a children's block, and the audio is like the printing on the block, the A's or the letters or the numbers. So you can build the blocks up into a tower, and the blocks don't change, or all this. So you we're going to build the whole show with these building blocks called tracks. Inside each track is audio, so we can change that around just like Word in a Word document. All right, so there's the first one with the frame, the audio in the frame. As you can see, I'm playing around with this cursor. I call it a cursor, they call it a select tool. I call it a cursor because it looks like a cursor and it acts like a cursor, and there it is. And you could select any piece of audio you need to. If you need to select all the audio within the track, a fast way is to click this blue part over here and it selects all the audio. The other important, and under here is different ways to describe the track, not the audio. Is it in stereo or mono? The audio doesn't care, but the track does. Down here in the lower left-hand corner of the track is collapse and expand. Okay? And so I've collapsed it because we're going to add every file I've got here. What's the next one? Whoops. Oh, darn it. There we go. The intro. Collapse it. And then the first song, what's the first one? That one. Collapse it. Where's Nature Note? There it is. All right. And one more, just because, what was Nature Note? Was, Mushroom Bed. Okay. So I'm going to just populate this session, this single session of Audacity vertically, one by one, in the sequence that I want them to appear. We could change them around later, but that's what we're, and so here I am going to do all these files in a row, except we don't have time for that, so I made one ahead. Thank you very much. Be prepared to wait for your computer because there's a lot of audio there and it's doing a lot of work, a lot of processing. Really, really fast processor and tons of RAM would help. I have a medium processor and medium RAM, and it works just fine. Okay. So here is the session of Audacity, which now has all the files vertically. This is a bad spot because if I hit play, it's a horror. And so what I'm going to do is, because it's all at once, you can see I'll maximize the screen here. You can see time goes across the top and all my tracks, my building blocks, are going down in order of appearance. So to get out of this precarious moment, I'm going to select all. The select all button here is under the menu here, Control A. I generally use my left hand for all these controls of various types, and my right hand for the mouse. I know other people are opposite, and that's fine, but the point is use both hands and try not to see every track is highlighted, every track. And what we want is all the tracks end to end. In the tracks menu, align tracks end to end. And so what this is going to do is align, is going to put them all end to end, just like that, just like I pictured it. All right, so here we are. Now it's starting to look like a program that goes through an hour plus a little. It's sort of roughly, but it's sort of looking, now it will at least play, but it will sound horrible. There's a whole host of problems we're commencing to fix right now. For instance, my intro audio I made for my voice audio appears after my intro music, and my outro audio appears at the end of my outro music. So things are exactly what I asked for and wholly ill-suited for playing. It would sound, and plus there's red, which means too hot, and there's too small, and there's big, and there's gaps that you would see from this distance out. Okay, so here we are. This is at this point is a good point to save your work, save your project, and when you save your project, where's my trailing edge? This one. Yeah. When you save your project, it's going to save it as a .aup file. Now this file is what it means is a Audacity session. So it's going to keep track of all our capacity to edit and move tracks around and all those things. It's a session. It's not an audio file. It's a session. So what it will do when it saves is it will create a data folder and the .aup file, which is really just a header. Try real hard later on not to upload the AUP file instead of your MP3 file. It won't play. But that is, so now this is saved. I called it first draft, and now this is saved, and it's, so anything happens, we can go back to this one. But now on to fixing problems. Specifically, I've got to put the audio and the intro audio and the intro music together. So, a note about the cursor. Cursor is a selection tool, so you can select great big swaths of your program or medium swaths. Cut this out of here and then paste it into here. And you could do stuff like that. You could take this track and cut it and paste it, and so the other, so that's what the selector tool is good for. But the other thing that selector tool is good for is a point in space on your screen. There it is. It's a point. When I zoom in all the way in to do the fine work, to do the finely detailed work we're going to need to do, I want it to go into that spot. So I need to be able to control my zooming in and out. So I'll click my pointer, my cursor, just one click in a random spot on my first track. And on the view zoom, there's the zooms right there. Zoom in, control 1, zoom out, control 3. I don't use these menus, but if you zoom in, you can see it will zoom in. Oh, it's probably, oh, not responding means just go ahead and wait a minute. So if you zoom in 1, it zooms in a little bit. I don't do that. I hold the control key, excuse me, down. Just hold it down and then just repeatedly click the 1 or the 3. 1 to zoom in. Whoa, that's too far. 3 to zoom out. Oh, it's trying to catch up. Oh, that's too far out. Keep your eye on the top track, because that's the one I'm going to want to work on, and that's roughly where I'm going to expand it, expand the next one. And so that's my cursor tool, which is a selection tool and a pointer. So I've pointed my way down into this location. Now the other two tools that are important are the time shift tool, which I call move, because you move the track around. But okay, it's time shift of the audio, but it's my move tool. The other one is the envelope, specialized volume control. So you could do all sorts of things with the envelope tool. But I'm going to undo that just for a second, because I'm going to want to, what the task is, put my audio in place. There it is, I happen to know. But the music is too loud. It's going to drown out the audio, the spoken audio. So that's where my envelope tool comes in. I'm going to give myself a little bit of breathing room. There it is. Now that was control 1. 1 zoom in, and I can make my life a little easier. Okay, so not only does this control the volume, but you add a point here and a point here. You keep clicking, you can add points. With 2 points, you could protect the front part of it and really control the rest of it. My intro music is very busy, very cloying, and a bit too much. So I have to truncate that quite a bit in order to, have the ratio to be what I want it to be.
Hello and welcome to the Trailing Edge, a weekly check-in on set.
Whoop, I crowded it.
Hello and welcome to the Trailing Edge.
Okay,
A
better.
weekly check-in on 7 short climate news and commentary programs from each of the 7 short news and commentary programs.
Still a little loud. I'm a little fussy about that, so I'm going to go back to my envelope tool. And you saw that I expanded the track a little more, which you can do. Just like to give yourself some breathing room, you could open it up and then do a finer and finer cut on that. Back to the cursor.
I'm your host and selector, David Furlan. Following each of the 7 short. I'm your host and.
All right, that's better. We're going to do this fixing as we go. So now I've got my intro music and my intro voice, except of course my move tool or my time shift for the first song. And there's my first song. Bring it right up to there. Back over there to the selector tool or the
By
cursor.
Helene Cronin.
Fine then. On to the next one. Go to the end of this track. Whoops, I went too far. And open it up. Move it over. And there we go. All right. Okay, fine. Done with that one. Now, I'm going to hit Control 3, which is going to contract it a little bit so I can look at this 2-minute Nature Note program, which I downloaded from AudioPort. It looks good. It looks full-bodied. This song is full-bodied. This song, all the way up to the 1 dB. See that 1 dB mark? And this is down here in the weeds. Loud and soft. So you can see this is very dense and quite loud. And this is spoken word.
Especially strong in early spring.
All right, spoken word. Here's what I'm finding in my program, and you might not find it in your program. The relative strength of spoken word and music. If they're together or not, it's case by case. Specifically, the automatic gain control in the processor. If I play this like it is with the strong music audio track and the full strength spoken word following it, what the automatic gain control part of let me back up. The processor is a device in the transmitter booth. It processes all our audio before it goes to the transmitter itself. And its job is to boost up weak signals and to suppress excessive signals. So things are too big, it compresses and suppresses, and things that are too small, like spoken word, it'll elevate. So what I find when I'm playing them side by side, that these little MP3s get boosted way up. So if I play these big fat songs, which are not too loud exactly, because there's not a lot of red. One tiny piece of red isn't bad. It looks flat because it's full-bodied. The point is that it's different when it's after it's broadcast. In the Air Studio, you don't notice it because you're listening to the studio signal. You can't listen to the broadcast signal in the Air Studio because of the panic button delay. But at home, here we are sitting. So when I was at home, a good song would come on, and I didn't know it, but the automatic gain control was suppressing it a bit. And then the automatic gain control came on and took the MP3 and boosted it a bit. And so it became an imbalance. So I was leaping for my volume control on my stereo. And in my car, too. It was just too loud to hear talking. It wasn't balanced. That was post-process. That was after. That's on the Air product. You can really tell.
Hey, David,
Now,
can I interrupt you with a quick
absolutely.
question? Yeah. So just to be clear, everybody, David was just talking about once you've done a show and it's being pushed out through our broadcast gear, the gear is helping to fix the audio levels. That's the kind of the super basic lay person way to say what David just said. The question that we have here, so you started the laying the multi-tracks here with saying that you had files already on your computer. The question I got was, how did you get those files? Like, did you record them from your computer into Audacity, for example, or did you already own the MP3s of the music? Did you record obviously you recorded your voice tracks through a microphone. I'm going to go ahead and answer that question of it, but can you give an example of where you've gotten the snippets from podcasts and things like that? How do you record that and make it your own file?
Oh, two different types of files. Let me go switch over to it. Two different types of files. These are the spoken word files, the Green News Report, This Week in Water. All these, most of them are from AudioPort. So you would talk to Lou about accessing and including AudioPort material in your show and stuff like that. These are all, and so that's where I got those. The WAV files I did, just like Lou said, with my microphone, and I did it myself. The music files, these, I have a music collection, and I ripped all my CDs off of Amazon Music and other places. And I have a huge shout out and many thanks for Mark and Dave over in the music department for giving us the Dropbox access to the new music downloads and new music stuff. So a lot of everybody collects their own digital library the best they can. There are ways to record music that's playing over the internet, but that becomes a relationship between you and your provider. If you open up an Audacity recording session, record something off somewhere and play that, that's not the exact kosher way, but a common way for so did that answer the question, Lou?
It did, yeah. Let me pick that up a little bit because I answered it in the same coy way, the same kind of question last week, trying to clarify copyright, fair use, and the ever moving target of the numerous music streaming platforms that are out there. So to sum up what David just said, you can definitely use your own purchased digital music files. You're just dragging those from your iTunes or wherever they are into Audacity to use it. You can use your own ripped old CD, like a lot of us who had CD collections did exactly what David did, rip them and have those files. You can play that. And again, remember, pretty much any music you're going to play, we're covered by the pro subscription rates we pay to all of the labels.
If it's published.
Exactly.
Published.
So generally for music, you don't need to worry about it. I will say, however you go about obtaining it, I will just say that in a general kind of way. And also the note that Audacity can record off the internet. So and maybe David could show us that after he does the finishing his show kind of building there. The other thing I'll say too is that, recording things off the internet, if you were going to use copyright material, but again, the snippet approach, right, where you're using it as a larger context for your totally different creative show. So, a snippet of we've used Bill Kibben before as an example, talking about the climate change, demonstrations he's doing lately. And then you're talking more largely about climate change. Your show has Bill McKibben as a small piece of it, and it's not his entire, speech that he gave or something like that. So however you get that snippet of Bill McKibben is how you would create it as a, audio file, again, perhaps ripping it through Audacity or to put it into your show, and it becomes a standalone multi-track, as you just saw with David. So just to kind of give people a little bit of wayfinding of how you make these standalone files. And obviously David did this in advance of tonight to help us kind of keep moving, at a faster pace, but that's the pregame. And hopefully that answered the questions. If not, go ahead and message me again in the chat, and David, I'll hand it back to you to pick it back up where we were.
Okay. Even if you scrape something off of YouTube, It's called scraping. You record it on YouTube, then make yourself a wave or something, and then play that on the radio. Playing it on the radio isn't illegal. It's not ethical necessarily, but the artist gets a legit play. Gets a legit play, and I always delete my scrapes. Of course, everybody deletes their scrapes. Where were we? So with the spoken word part of in comparison to music, this is where I find where the processor, which really does a lot of good work, but you can in your own show you're going to have your own how it sounds. So in my show, it goes from a skinny MP3 to a fat. So I have a real challenge in that regard. So I have to second guess the processor. You might have a perfectly nice time having full-fledged audio like this and not compared to anything else. It might be just fine. How does your show sound when you listen to it? On the radio, live on the radio. It's just no substitute. So I'm going to then, I have to limit this audio on mine. So I'm going to highlight it. I can highlight it with my cursor, my selector tool, or I can just click over here in this area, and under effect, lots of good stuff over here. And amplify, which gives you complete control over the amplification of this. You could way overdo it, or you could put it in the negative numbers and really cut back on it. To repeat an amplificate, to repeat one of these effect tasks, Control R. So I'm going to hit Control R, and I'm going to drop that nature note. You can see it's just a tiny little thing. And so with the processor on my show, with the processor knocking back my beautiful music programs files a little bit and boosting up my cheesy little MP3s a lot, it sounds, I can sort of second guess the processor. You might not have to do all that, but you do want to have a consistent presence, a consistent sweet spot where you're not out of with the words and the music to each other and stuff like that. And so I'm going to collapse that, and I'm going to continue on my merry way. I have repaired the intro. I have repaired this, for my show, the audio on this MP3 spoken word, and now I'm using these tools up here, the move tool, to put that back in, to put that in place. Is that the right spot?
Goddard College Community Radio.
Well, I'll be snipping that out. That was on audio port. It used to be. I cut those out. Those Goddard colleges. You should too. Okay. So we're going to go down through the entire, and so I've collapsed these. Control 3, 3, 3. That's zoom out, zoom out, zoom out. There it is. Good time to do a Control S for save. Every 10 edits, every 10 or 15 edits at the most, Control S. You'll thank yourself. I have repaired all these. I've repaired these all the way up to here. I'm going to go down through the whole thing and repair the lot. But wait a minute. There is, but there's no time for that. So we're going to the next step, which is I've gone through all the files. I've limited all the, I have corrected all the levels to the way in which my program unfolds. This is taking a moment, and I have arranged the intro and the intro music, the outro music. And let's see. And now it's time to, Lou, could you remind me, have I gone through the envelope tool yet? I have, yes, point by point.
You did do envelope, and we've actually got a couple other questions here. So
Okay.
I'll seize the
All right.
opportunity here as a
All right.
pause point.
Okay,
So,
let's stop and answer the questions. At this point is a good point this is where I listen to the whole thing all through at once. I take a break, I come back, and I listen to the whole thing just like it's a radio program, and that's where I'll uncover things I don't like that need to be fixed. And so this is pretty much the 2/3 mark of the production. I've put them all in sequence, and I have pushed them all together. And you can see when you move them closer or farther to get apart, that will create the pace and the flow of your show. The gaps between the files, I like them tight, but not too tight, and not choppy, all natural like. And so some people like a lot of white space, brilliant. But that's how you control that. I would recommend picking a style and sticking to that. 2 seconds every time, or something like that, because it will lend a real structure to your show that is not part of your show, but is absolutely noticed by the listener. Is consistencies like that of the structure. Okay, first question.
Yeah, first question goes back a little bit here. We had, so how exactly do you take files off a Dropbox and put them onto Audacity or thumb drive? And I can kind of answer half of that, which is those links that come out will send you right to a browser window that opens up Dropbox, and you are able to literally right click or one click if you're on a Mac and download those files directly to you, and they're essentially yours. You could do whatever you wish with them, make radio shows, make fun home dance parties, whatever that is. And literally what we saw at the very beginning of this with David's screen share is how you would then bring them into Audacity. So they're living somewhere on your computer after you download them, whether they're in a downloads folder, or maybe you're downloading them directly into, a music program like iTunes or something. And then you're just going to take them and drag them and drop them as David was doing. I really like David's tip, by the way, of pulling all those files together into a folder where you can easily access them all in one place. Don't make yourself waste time going file hunting on your computer as you're trying to pull a show together, because there's a creative element here that David's underselling, I think, about the show creation. Like, you're going to be really I think, focused on the technical pieces that he's showing you about, like trimming up the tracks and things, but don't forget what he just was talking about. It's about that smooth transition piece. You're trying to like really listen to what you're creating, the transitions between tracks of music, or you talking into a music track or out of a track. And that actually goes to the second question, David, which is, can you actually play us a couple more of those transitions within your show so people can hear what you're talking about, either from a talk into a music or a music into a music, or whichever that is?
Okay, I basically have yeah, okay. We'll go to the outro, and I'm going to click the cursor at the outro and go zoom in, control 1 1 1 1 1, and I'm going to scroll up a little bit, expand things so I can see what's going on here. All right. This past week, so I'm going to turn this down a little bit. They might be giants. They are giants, I tell you.
Thanks very much for listening to The Trailing Edge. I'm your host and selector, David Furland. Behind me, the Agents and Frank Purcell and the Get Smart theme. Shadow Government by They Might Be Giants.
So in this case, I ran out of time, so I didn't have any, I usually like to put 10 or 15 seconds of music chill out a little bit from the big hotness, and then sort of put myself. So with the envelope tool, I have then at the end of my audio.
Thanks again, and we'll see you on the radio.
Now, if you have if this was two music tracks, you could do this exact same thing and blend them. That's what Peter Beauchesne does on All Mixed Up. You know, he's got all these cool music playing, and then somewhere, voices show up. He's putting those tracks at the same physical location in Audacity, but he's using the envelope tool to control the sound so it sounds just right. And yeah, it's a lot of fooling around with it. After a while, you get if you're using your speed keys and like that. Let's see. Is that the kind of transition that was asked about?
I think so. And we had two more questions come in too, David. Not to keep firing them at you here, but
yeah, I want to get to the export process.
And this is actually, I think this will tee you up. It's opening day, everybody, in case you're not a baseball fan. So like, this is the on deck question that will set David up for the finishing home run here. So it's about normalizing the normalizing function at Audacity. So that's an end step there, which I'm sure David will show us. And similar to that, how do we need to experiment with output levels to know as the project sounds good, or does that final kind of normalizing function take care of that? Like how obsessed do you have to get about the leveling stuff that you were just going over a little bit earlier, David?
Okay. I'm going to put the cursor back to home. This is bugging me. Control S. Okay, there we go. I always pick up my workspace and go back to this square one before I go anywhere else, because if you it gets confusing fast. I'm sorry, the question was?
Yeah, so the question is essentially the normalizing of all the audio files together as you're exporting. Do you just let Audacity take care of that, or do you have to futz with it a lot more? How much futzing is needed?
I've done my futzing. I don't normalize. I don't do any of that stuff. I've been thinking maybe I ought to. I don't know. I'm a little unfamiliar with the normalization. I've fooled around with it a bunch, and I can't get myself to understand it that well. So I gave up years ago, and now I'm doing it sort of the old-fashioned way, and sort of second-guessing the processor manually. As you can see here, I sort of do extra, maybe I do extra work. So anybody figures out how to get excellent results like what you would otherwise fantasize about with a normalization process of these disparate audio intensities to make them all in a similar sweet spot. So a skinny, tiny, wimpy little spoken word MP3 can compete with and not dominate, a suppressed, amazing file of the incredible music. And so it's kind of a jungle out there. So I don't do normalization. Maybe I ought to. It might help my little problem I have here with my comparing tiny and large on a routine basis.
Yeah. I would just add in, David, that I think a little of both goes a long way. So largely what David was doing is that beautiful creative element of building a show that actually sounds good. He's soundscaping it, again, bringing his voice in, bringing it into music. Like, you do need to futz with it in that way. But what normalization is, just for folks who are total newbies to this whole thing, is essentially it's the end audio file coming to a 0 decibels. So if you were looking at these individual tracks, you've got, and this is true actually when you're in the station too, 0 is the number you're looking for. So it's that's the normalized level that everything sounds kind of like equal, if you will. Anything hotter than that, as David was saying earlier, goes into the positive numbers. Like, you don't want to be up in the what is that? The 0.5s, the 0.1s, because it's going to start to what they call peak. If you were in the studio, that's where you would see the VU meters pinned to the right and they'd be in the red, and you'd know that that's not a good thing. You want them kind of bumping up to the 0, and that's true. Exactly. There's what it would look like if you're doing it in Audacity. The opposite is true when a track is under 0 and it's in the negative numbers and it's like it's too small or it's too quiet. And you can mess with it a little bit. So say you're out there recording an interview and you had your recording device too far away from us and it's like too quiet and you're going to want to boost it. But the problem when you boost it is that it's boosting all the audio you've recorded. So if it's noisy outside, if it's windy outside, if you were in a coffee shop, it's boosting all of that audio together. So we can get into that in some, interview kind of one-on-one techniques, but that's why you pretty much always want the mics pretty much in people's faces, a really quiet space, because when you're in post-production like this, you're going to thank yourself when you're trying to normalize these different individual tracks and then overall. And programs like Audacity, GarageBand, Adobe Audition that Tonio was talking about earlier, they all have ways to do a final normalization that brings it all to that 0 point. So it kind of takes away the highs and the lows, if you will, across the whole thing and brings it to a kind of an equalized full track. I use GarageBand a lot individually, and GarageBand does it automatically for me. So it's a super nice little hack there, but there are ways to customize, do that in Audacity. Like David was saying, you can futz with it for a lot. And I'm pretty sure Adobe Audition, which is a fancier version of all of these things, does it as well. But the nice thing about it, and I just put it into the chat here, is that Audacity has a really handy manual. So as you go into getting a little bit more nuanced with Audacity, you can explore this a little bit more and practice it. Frankly, trust your ears is what I always tell people. And David's going to show us how to export this track. And if you go back and listen to it and you're like, oh my God, 30 minutes in, it cuts so low that it's like painful to listen to, you'll know you need to go back and fix it. But you can use both visual, which is why I love WAV files, which is what you're looking at right here. And you can also, again, trust your ears and always keep listening back, especially your final tape, if you will, because especially when you're in the beginning, that's the only way you're going to learn this and catch it as well. And of course, it's community radio. So we're not VPR. You're not going to get scolded if like there's a dropout halfway through your show and then it comes back. Like this is
You'll feel bad, but you'll feel bad.
Yeah, but there's a learning curve here. And then we're totally encouraging you to like lean into it with us. So yeah, and Damien's asking about futzing is the envelope, futzing the envelope tool. So David, can you just repeat the envelope tool's purpose?
Yes, the envelope tool is in essence a volume control for a track. I'm going to go to the first track, click in it, and control 11111, and we'll open it up a little bit. So it's controlling the volume of this, and and the envelope tool uses these points. And if I wanted the music, to get loud in the middle, I could keep adding points and protect. And so that would be a little point that would get louder and like that. So the envelope tool is designed to give you as much control of these as you want. You can really mess stuff up and really have some nice effects. And I would play around with it. It's great fun. And you can make it sound horrible, and you can make it sound really cool, but do it 100 times and you get 4 cool things. Yeah, you got four cool things.
Awesome. Okay. Thanks, David. All right. Why don't you take us home with the export, and we'll show folks how to get to that final file, however it's going to sound for your first bout out here.
All right. I'm going to control 3 all the way back to 0 because home base. Thank you very much. Start here. Always go back, clean up your tracks or collapse all your tracks, go back to square one. But wait a minute. Where were we? I was at a point where I listened to the show through all at once, and there's a problem. Oh no, this Mushroom song is Mushroom Men by Les Claypool, the guy from Primus, and turns out there wasn't 1 swear word, which I would snip, but there was 9 swear words, which feels like vandalism to me. So fortunately, I've got an alternate song. This is the last minute stuff. I got another song here, put that in, and I'm going to It goes to the bottom just like it was, but I don't want to mess up all my other work. So I'm going to go and pop out that song, go over to my move tool, pop it in, and look at these handy yellow lines that line stuff up pretty close. But I'm suspicious, plus I'm fussy about the transition. So I'm going to Control 1, zoom, 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 zoom. Does that sound fine?
.com.
Fine. But there's a problem. The new song was not the exact same length as the old song. So I don't want to forfeit all, I'm not going to go through all the tracks again. So here's how I fix that. I'm going to narrow these up a little bit. And I'm going to get Control 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. I'm going to have everything revealed. Now, here's my discrepancy right here. Just take your cursor, your selector tool, select the lot, just like that. And switching over to my move tool, move the thing as a entire unit and putting the new one in place. And so I want to check the transition, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, but I'm not in the right spot and I don't want to lose my select. Magic tool shift left arrow will bring you to the edge of the big out of view select area. Let me say that again. Shift left arrow will bring you to the left edge of the out of view select area. That was hard to say. And shift right arrow will do the same thing to the other side. Top and bottom, shift left arrow. So then I could see already that that's too far and I would not like that gap, so I'm going to tighten that up. Now I have forfeited I switch over to my cursor tool, forfeited my select.
I'm Rick Smith.
Perfect. I'm going to go back to square one. Control S is my save. Boom. Now I'm ready to export. And here we go. Okay. Over here in File, Export. Export as MP3. And the file name isn't as important as the metadata. But here it is in the MP3 in Audacity where you can control the quality. So talk shows, 128 kilobits per second or better. Music shows, 192 kilobits per second or better. I choose 256 because it's CD quality, quote unquote. And I find 320s, which are absolutely brilliant, good quality. I find it a little oversaturated myself, but that's your call. So, a constant bit rate, not variable. The robot is the robot. So, all those things in place. Now, here's the metadata screen. And it'll contain the metadata from the previous, or the most recent import, which in this case was that Sharon Jones track. I swapped out the Les Claypool. And so there it is. The robot, this is where the robot is going to look for, to queue up your file properly. First thing to do, clear it and make sure it's completely clear. Then stick in the file name that you and Lou are going to make an arrangement and do. And 0327. This one's mine. Trailing edge all one word underscore and the date. And you'll get your own. And arrange with Lou about what that is. So this is what the metadata screen needs to look like. Is the prearranged metadata track title and nothing else. If you put anything else in there, the robot will ignore it. It will ignore it. The robot is very particular. This is how the robot needs it. If you do that, the robot will pick it up as long as you follow the prescribed and agreed upon with Lou file name protocol, of which more on that in a little while. So go ahead and export that. And that's, and we don't have time for that. Fortunately, I've gone ahead and exported it in advance. And here it is. Now, I recommend, and it's highly recommended by me, that you take this finished product, which is ready to upload now. After all that, we're ready to upload the file. Not so. Highly recommended to take your file and drop that right into Audacity for one last little check over, because this is what the robot will see. So far, what we've seen is Audacity and ourself, and we have all our thoughts, and the end is in sight, and we're a little late, and everything. So pop it into Audacity just to make sure everything looks to be in order. And here it is. Everything looks to be in order. In my case, I don't know what it would look like if this was quote-unquote normalized, but it might look different, it might not. This is my survival strategy for my particular show, because I've got these really small MP3s that get boosted incredibly by the processor. I've got these really powerful audio music tracks that that the processor will suppress. You can see I've added, or I've reduced the intensity of these music files in order to help the processor a little bit. I'm going to meet it halfway, and because when I listen to the broadcast, the live broadcast, I listen to my show very closely. And if I have to leap for the volume because I did it, it's very annoying. To have, a tiny little MP3 like this come in way louder than this amazing song. So go, but that's me. I have yet to learn about normalizing. So why be normal? So, okay, everything looks to be in order. I would take a moment.
People are
good. Everything seems to be okay. I would play around with your file before you ship it, because here we go. We're gonna last thing to do, the upload process. Let's see where. It's called Drop Program Files, and Lou will give you the URL for this Google Drive. It's a Google Drive, and this is what it looks like. It contains instructions, detailed instructions, what I just went over, Lou will go over too, and this amazing queued files from localprogrammers.txt. That'll show you all the files that are currently queued up in the robot, okay? And there's mine, and yours will be in this list too. But it will be last week's, right? It'll be last week's. So I'm going to take my file and I'm going to upload it. Thank you very much. Upload. But I don't have time to wait for that. Cancel upload. Because here at my house it takes forever. Suffice it to say, after it's done uploading and you get a green check mark and it says complete, check this local programmers and see if your new file has been queued up in the robot. Now, it'll take a few minutes for it to show up. And if it doesn't show up in 2, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, wait a half hour. Because the tech team, they're looking for these files, and if it does, what you're looking for is the queue confirmation right here. And that's when the remote programmer's file has been successfully submitted. Now, there's other issues with people who are doing hybrid shows. Probably a lot more communication with Lou about when to run the robot show and when you're going to come in live, all that kind of scheduling stuff. But for me, I just do 100%. My show is designed to be a remote show, and it is. And so that's when It's finally submitted. Yeah, and I have done. And that is that's it. That's it. Okay, I'm going to now release my stop share and go back to normal.
Thank you, David.
Oh, one last thing.
Yeah.
One last thing. There's a lot of different aspects that go into the source material and other issues that I'd be only too glad to dive into with people after with another workshop or one-on-one, and I could help you build your process in your show. I've done it a dozen times, dozens of times, and so
Yep.
and so that I wanted to offer that.
Great. Thank you, David. So if more questions percolate for David, feel free to put them in the chat because we're going to switch gears now, and I'm going to take over presenting, and he'll look at the chat while I'm presenting, and he might be able to answer via chat there. But again, thanks, David Furlan, for showing us Audacity and show building, especially. I think it's really helpful to look at a program while the program's being used, if you will. So from the point that David just left off there, I just want to explain kind of what the robot is. So it's a Mac that's in the studio, and it has a scheduling program on there called Radiologic. And we have a small team of volunteers who take shifts of 2 days a week to just check down and make sure all of our remote submitted shows are in the system and look good and are ready to roll. We're always trying to kind of battle the notorious dead air. Something didn't air correctly, or the file didn't show up. So usually what will happen is if your show doesn't show up correctly, come through that Google Drive, we will reach out to you and let you know. So, you can kind of scramble to get it together. But this is a big reason why we ask remote shows to give us at least 24 hours. So get that show up at least 24 hours in advance. Bonus points if you can do it earlier than that, because that gives us time to catch problems if they come up. But again, as David pointed out, if you just get the naming protocols right, everything should work like clockwork. It feeds that MP3 and automatically syncs the whole process in the back end there. So there are humans, again, checking it down. Every once in a while, something weird happens, but that's how it's supposed to flow. And for people doing hybrid shows, what will happen is that one of two things happen. During a live show, your backup is just backup music. So the Radiologic program has just a regular playlist of songs that'll play if, like, for some reason you get a flat and you can't make it to the station. Instead of dead air, music will play in your background. In theory, once you're up to speed as a live programmer, we also hope that you will submit an evergreen show. This is what we call here. So it's basically a show that could air anytime. It doesn't talk about, snow. It doesn't talk about anything that's a timestampy kind of thing. It's just a regular old version of your show, and that can live as a backup. And really what you're doing is you're backing yourself up. Stuff happens. I get calls from programmers all the time. My kid's sick. I've got a flat tire. The roads are glare ice, and you're your own best friend to be thinking in advance about an evergreen show. And again, the program basically has it sitting waiting for you to kind of back you up in that way. So for hybrid shows, if you're going back and forth between live and remote, the trick here is that you either can be using this Google Drive link here to constantly just be refreshing that show, if you will. And what will wait there is the last recorded show that you did, or the other way that we will do this is through a Dropbox link, which we will use for separate things. And I'll explain that in a second. But that's essentially how the robot works and how we kind of do remote versus hybrid versus live shows and what happens in behind the scenes. So that said, the last couple of things I wanted to share with you guys tonight before we kind of wrap it are kind of a little bit of content stuff, and then a little bit more of context of kind of home show recording, a couple of the different gear things that you might need or want to be thinking about. So let me just bring this over here. So the first thing to know is that remote show content, it's really important that just because you're doing a remote show, that it doesn't sound like it could be just about anywhere. We do want you still sounding like you're part of Central Vermont Community Radio, and that you're including community bits and tidbits and things like that. I know a lot of your shows already are kind of planning with that. You're talking to local neighbors or whatever that is, but some of the ways that we do that are making sure that you're sharing each other's show promos. You're playing 1 or 2 of those throughout your show. You're using the community events calendar. You're playing PSAs. Those are those things that we're talking about that give you that real community vibe. Otherwise, your show could just be airing just about any station, nationwide. And people do make shows like that for sure, but we do really encourage you, especially with remote made shows, to please what I call GDR it, make sure you're, putting our, station IDs in there and things like that. Of course, in addition to the legal ID that's required. The other thing is make sure that you are really accessing what is called the programmer section of the website. So to be specific, if you haven't explored the website yet, this is gdr.org. Mostly people come here to stream us, look at the schedule, hopefully donate, and also use the archives. The very bottom menu footers, as they call them, has this programmer login. This is just for you all. If you click on this, it takes you to a login page, and it's the password I keep sharing via the listserv, and it's WGDR 2022, capital letters WGDR. And this is going to be your best friend. This is where all the links from all of our programming trainings are here. These are the YouTube links, the PDFs of slides, but it also has general programmer information here. So the contact info of all your fellow programmers, the link to the station manual. This is a really good place to just kind of come back to as you're finishing your checklist, for example, and other things. This is also where you can get a link to Audacity. I mean, you can just Google it too. It's a free download, but I'll be linking the manual and things like that I put into the chat as well. This is also where, last training, Peter was talking about free, royalty-free, copyright-free resources, Creative Commons, free speech. These are some of the links here as well. So make sure to spend a little bit of time on this site and familiarize yourself with the many tools. And I keep adding to this as well as people kind of ask me questions. I'm like, oh, I should put that on the programmer, page there. The other thing I wanted to talk about is remote gear. So you can do this with just about anything. In fact, if I really wanted to do a show real down and dirty, I could do it with my earbuds as my headphones and the onboard mic. If I really wanted to just crank out a basic show, my room would have to be really quiet. I'd have to make sure that I'm not, knocking the microphone against me, but I could do it this basic if I really wanted to. You could upgrade yourself and get yourself a Yeti mic. Now, a lot of people use these. It's basically an external mic that you can plug in through USB port into your mic, into your laptop or your computer, and it gives you a very nice broadcast sound quality sound. Everybody who does their home podcasts, you see them with these Yeti mics. I mean, this you know this. You see Glenn and Doyle. Usually they're upside the other way, like this, right? But that's essentially what a Yeti mic is. They're about $80, $100. You can find them online. It's a pretty solid investment if this is a thing that you're going to want to do. They also come with their own little table stand. If you want to get super fancy and feel like you're making radio from home, they do sell little boom mics. And this is a mini version of what you would see in the radio station with the mics that we have there. So that's kind of scaling up from there. You can also use regular old headphones to plug in so that you can hear yourself. I highly recommend that. And again, these kind of work in that way as well. You don't have to get super fancy because nobody's watching you at home. You're just kind of making something happen. Beyond that, there are ways that you can do more. So for example, I've been a DJ for about 25 years. I've got an old Rain mixer, which is an actual DJ mixer that you could plug into external audio sources like turntables, CD players, that kind of stuff. You'd have to kind of be already invested in that kind of thing. But there are ways to use a mixer of some sort, like a DJ mixer, as your home mixing board, if you will, and then feed that into a computer as well. So if people are interested in that, that's a separate offline conversation I could really nerd out with, and I could embarrassingly show you all of the gear I have kept over the years at my house and Frankenstein a home radio station. But there are ways that you can actually play that stuff in there. So for starting, I highly recommend basically what you saw David do it from the beginning. Use pre-made digital files, find them from the internet, record them in whatever way you wish there, and start there. If you wanted to kind of trick it out after that for other leveling up, talk to me and we can nerd out together. So that remote submission process that David kind of showed you real fast is a couple different steps. So we do want you to remember to have a specific file length at the end there. So at the very beginning, David was talking about his show doesn't actually start until about a minute or 30 seconds in sometimes. It also ends pretty close to the top of the hour, but we ask for a minute or two to allow us to fit in other things that need to fit in that we're using as promos. So for example, when we start doing the drive, we're gonna have promos that we need to fit in, and we need 30 seconds here, 60 seconds there. So generally, if you've got wiggle room, we're asking you to end your files at either, if you're an hour, the 58 mark or the 158 mark. And again, that allows us a little wiggle room at the beginning if there's underwriting for your show, or at the end, if there's other filler stuff we need to put in that are kind of station promos and things like that. So aim for those 58 and 158 kind of benchmarks at the end. If you send in a file that's 158.30, this is not VPR. that's no big deal. But I'm just telling you that there's a reason that we ask for those timings at the end. The naming protocols are not complicated. It is literally going to be your show name with the underscore and then the actual date of the air date. So for example, this was my very first remotely submitted show for GDR, Get Fresh with DJ Lou underscore, and then a couple of Tuesdays ago. And that will be your naming protocol every time. So the only thing you have to change is the date. Remember, the year comes first, and then it's the month and the day of the day of month. As David showed you, you want to export it as an MP3. We don't need WAV files. Those are too big to literally as a file size. And also we already just need an MP3. Everything gets compressed, as David was just talking about anyway. So don't try to bring us a sound system quality something, because we're going to compress it anyway. That Google file, he actually already showed you, so I'm not going to repeat that. That link is on that programmer section of the website. And again, remember, we want at least 24 hours before airtime for that. So what I'm going to just show you here is really quick. I'm a Mac user, and GarageBand comes free. So it's a prettier version of of Audacity, really. So this is what multi-tracking looks like in GarageBand here. And again, you're seeing WAV files here. This is a full show that's already been done. So you're not seeing as many kind of cut up different pieces there. But what I really enjoy about GarageBand, at least, is that with these different trackings and stuff, you can get specific at the end of your show there for the exact time that you want to end. See how this yellow line just drops out here. And again, as I was telling you, it normalizes for me. So I don't have to go through and futz too much with the different levels. What it will do, though, is make it sound super crappy if I didn't pay attention to where the levels generally were throughout it. So if they were all super low, it's going to try to normalize it, and it's going to sound very crunchy is the best way I can describe it. If it's too loud and it's trying to push it down, it's going to sound smushed. You'll know it when you hear these things. These very technical terms of crunchy and smushed will make sense if you ever do it to yourself. The way that GarageBand does it is you just go to Share and Song to Music, which is the new version of iTunes, in case you don't know it. And this is, if you're doing it through GarageBand, is where you would do those naming protocols. It doesn't let you get into metadata, and this is why I'm showing it for anybody who wants to try using GarageBand, is because it's just called title. And this is where you would put it in here, and you'd want to strip out what GarageBand tries to add on, which is the today's date and time and things. You just kind of delete that off. And if I hit share, it would send it off to iTunes for me. It's a 2-hour show. I'm not going to do it right now because it'll take a few extra minutes, but that's essentially how you would send it. And again, it would be in your music. You drag it from there into that Google Drive. I'll stop here for a second. Any questions about the file sharing steps at the end there? So the naming protocols, the length, where you're putting these things. Pretty self-explanatory. Yeah. Okay. So just real quick for people who are watching back and they're creating evergreen shows. So they're not doing this every single week. They've made one evergreen show, and thank God I don't have to do that again. I just have one evergreen show and it's going to be there for the end of time. Again, you're going to be wanting using the naming protocols we just talked about, but you're going to, instead of a date, you're just going to put evergreen instead of a date, so that the way that the robot's just looking at the title track, it's not looking for any of that other data. So again, just leave it all blank, as David was saying earlier. If you're going to be going into Audacity or GarageBand and start making us legal IDs, show promos, PSAs, our naming protocols for that are very simple. So if you made a legal ID for the station, it literally, excuse me, let me go back here. Very unhelpful with the PowerPoint going back and back. The naming protocol for a PSA would basically be, CATS, PSA, and basically that's all we need. We don't need anything more complicated than that. There's no dates or anything involved in that. That's really a simple process. Same thing for a legal ID. The thing about the difference between a station promo and a legal ID is that it has to be WGDR Plainfield, WGDH Hardwick for it to be called a legal ID. Please do not label it legal ID unless it has that specifically in it, because it doesn't count. And if we played a legal, if the computer thinks it's a legal ID, plays at the top of the hour, and it just says, you're listening to 91.1 WGDR.org, and then it rolls on, that's not a legal ID and we're out of compliance. So that's the only one to really get right, is label a legal ID only if it's an actual legal ID. The new thing that we have is a Dropbox link, which again is linked through the programmer website. And this is where you would put evergreen shows, PSAs, show promos. If you record a drive testimonial that we talked about last week, this is what it would look like here. Dropbox is so much more simple than Google Drive. You drag it in here. It basically lets you hit the upload button. It uploads, and then there's a little dancing lady at the end that says, it worked. good job. And it comes to us on the robot computer and we're able to take it from there. Nothing else needed on your part for that at all. Finally, the last couple things I wanted to talk about tonight is remember that your checklist is your best friend. You are coming in for a landing here, everybody. You're almost ready to start making these shows. You know, for remote specific made shows, folks, I encourage you to make a practice show, like spend some time with it, figure out Audacity, figure out GarageBand, whatever program you're actually deciding to commit to, spend some time with it, export it, listen to it, come back and listen to it. I'm happy to spot listen to shows as well. If you're like, oh, I feel like I got something funky, I'm sure David's willing to listen to shows too. We can figure out how to file share it so it doesn't take up inboxes for email. But you know, definitely practice. This is why we're having live people do shadowing, because they're getting in there to practice, you know, turning the mics on and things like that. And the best way for remote people to practice is to literally make a show from soup to nuts, including trying, you know, the export without actually putting it into the Google Drive. You can put it into the Google Drive, but nothing will happen on the other end because we, until you and I pick your show start date, it won't actually air anywhere. We won't have it in the Radio Logic. The last thing I wanted to also explain is that besides recording a show or two, is that you and I definitely need to check in before it's go time. So I'll send you a quiz. I know it sounds ridiculous to quiz at the end, but it's actually our final check down to make sure that the top 10 things that are critical about getting it right on the air, like with actual content that's going out, are understood by you. And so there'll be a quick quiz. It'll be like a Google quiz, like a Google form quizzy kind of thing you do online. Basically, passing is about 75%. If you get anything less than that, you and I will just have a quick conversation to clarify. It's not like you fail everything. Don't worry. It's not, we're not, you know, evil like that. But that quiz piece is a final step. And then you and I basically just deciding, okay, you're ready to roll. Great. Let's pick a day to start your first show. And then we go. Like there's nothing more fancy than that. We just kind of like get you plugged into the schedule. And the more this is all muscle memory. This is a lot like riding a bike. As soon as you start riding, it's going to feel easier and easier. You're going to pick up little tricks and hacks along the way. You know, it's something that feels technically hard at the beginning, perhaps, but as soon as you get the technical stuff down, that's when the creativity is going to really flow and you're going to get a lot more ideas about how to make your show, tweak it every time. In fact, the best thing you can do once you start doing your show live is do exactly also what David was saying, is like, listen to it when it airs, hear how it sounds. Figure, like, give yourself little notes about like what you might do a little bit differently next time, but also give yourself props for what sounds really effing good. I mean, like this is about like feeling good about making programming that is not just for the listeners, but also for you. You know, you're coming to this and your why for doing a show is as important, I think, as, you know, the experience that the listeners are having enjoying your show as well. So that said, I'll stop sharing my screen here for a second. That's pretty much the end of the official content for tonight. Again, we were trying to accomplish, show you a little Audacity, show you how to build a show, multi-tracking, answer some of the final questions about file uploading and things like that. Are there other questions that we didn't get to either in David's section or my section, or also generally like things that we didn't get to yet that you feel like would be a good question for other people to hear as well to the answers to? Yeah, Damien.
Yeah, for an hour-long show, do we record an ID as part of the show if it's only an hour long?
Great question. So we take care of the great thing about, as David was saying, the robot's never late. So we make the robot as much as possible, make sure that a top of the hour ID happens when it's an hour show. So it starts with a legal ID. So you actually don't need to start your show with a legal ID. You can. I mean, there's no harm in having two IDs. Some listeners get annoyed by that, but frankly, I'd rather get it right twice than get it wrong, like, you know, at all. So, so what I would actually recommend is you get to play around with what we call station promos instead. So you can use a colloquial like, you're listening to Central Vermont, you know, Community Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. Like, that's not a legal ID. You know, that's just like talking about the name of this, you know, the overall organization and station. You can talk about where to stream it. You can, if you're a music show, make sure you're giving a plug to the Spinatron, you know, site where people can go get your playlists. I mean, those are key pieces to have in there. But yeah, specifically for an hour show, you don't need to lead it with a legal ID. You can kick one at the end if you want, but again, you can trust the robot to always get it right. That's why, that's one of the bonuses of having a 1 hour show. Maria.
you mentioned you might be able to show us how to, whatever you call it, grab things off of the internet. And I was also wondering if you know of a good source for like sound effects that would be free and not get you in trouble.
Yeah, so I'll send you, for the last part of that question, that programmer section of the website that had like the Creative Commons at the very bottom. If you scroll down, it's got the copyright free stuff. You'll find short little music beds there, and you also will find certain types of sound effects. Generally, Google's your best friend if you combine a search with copyright free and then enter in whatever your search term is. You know, the thing about short snippet copyrights, short snippet sound effects is that it does fall into fair use. So, you know, unless your entire show is, you know, the recording that someone made at, I don't know, some YouTube something for a full hour, like that would be full on copyright. So remember that if you're taking a small snippet of just about anything, it's fair use, and it's an educational and artistic repurposing of it. The recording of stuff off the internet. So there's two ways I would answer this. Again, if you're a Mac user, and again, I'm going to be a little bit like nerdy, snobby, whatever Mac users are, there's a wonderful program that's called Audio Hijack that I'm a big fan of. And it's another way to record anything off your computer or the internet. Anything that's putting out audio. So I could be playing my iTunes and turn on the Audio Hijack and it'll record it for me. Or I can actually record voice into it as well. And what Audio Hijack does is it creates it as an MP3 and it exports it. And then I have an audio file that, you know, like what David just has. And I can just kind of keep ripping stuff or scraping, if you will, from whatever I want to be playing off of my computer, whether I have it on my computer or if it's coming off of a web browser. Audio Hijack does have a small price, but frankly, it's worth paying for, in my opinion, because it's just such a solid program. And you can, and they've got a ton of great tutorials. It's a very straightforward, easy to use program. In Audacity, I'm going to have to kick it back to David, and we might not, for the sake of that this video is going to be shared widely, including on, ironically, YouTube. I don't think we're going to show you it on the screen how to do that. You probably can YouTube it, ironically, but David, what is the function for Audacity? Like, can you just hit record and it record? Like, do you change the sound settings to have it record off the computer versus a microphone input? Like, what's the specific there? Oh,
That's exactly what it is. Let's see. I'll show you really quickly what it looks like. Okay. What were we looking for? We're looking for.
So in Audacity, what's the setting for recording something straight off of your computer? Any audio that's playing.
So we'll open up a Audacity session. Here is the way in which Audacity will receive a source. So when I play something on YouTube and it's in my sound card, when I click the record button, this is what we get. It didn't work in this case. I wonder why. Point is, you can set in Audacity line in or the speakers. Generally, if it's on the speakers, it will record stuff in that's playing in your computer, like YouTube and stuff like that. Line in is for I use it for an input from my stereo. So I could play stuff off my stereo. I could play a vinyl album on my stereo and record it in Audacity. Then I clean up the pops. That's another source of audio music, is the old-fashioned way. Get a record or a tape, and you own it, right? So rip it, recording vinyl onto Audacity and then making yourself a wave, perfectly legit. And because you own the piece, but what is being recorded is controlled by the speakers, which input in Audacity it is. And in the Audacity preferences, you can go to the recording options and make some choices there. It's a bit of a fiddle. To get your microphone, sometimes it's plug and play, and you gotta fool around settings in order to make it right. This is always a fun one. For Windows people, who knows or cares what Windows WhatsApp and Windows Direct Sound and MME really stands for? Nobody knows or cares. One of them will work. In my case, Windows WASIP. So I don't know or care what those mean, but in Windows world, one of them will put your sound card right into this Audacity session. Just click record and then stop and then export. And then you can fill in your metadata there if it's a song.
Awesome. Thanks, David. And in that spirit of sharing, I'm just going to show you real quick the Audio Hijack program I just mentioned here. So Audio Hijack, again, you can download it from the web. I think it's like, I don't know, $50 for the registration of the site. And you open it up and it basically you build by dragging what kind of input and what kind of output you're going to want to have for your kind of audio piece there. And so hang on a second here. Let me make sure that make sure I'm sharing the right screen here. There we go, Audio Hijack. So it's basically, you can see it's got the system audio as the main input here. So I could play a YouTube track, my music, Spotify, it would sound horrible, but it would record all of that. If I really wanted to create an orchestra of awfulness, that's what I would record. If I, left my Spotify playing or YouTube playing and it happened to be recorded and I brought that into my show as a separate audio file, that's how I would have it happen. It's telling it to take the system audio, record it as an MP3, and it's actually going to have as an output device so I can hear it, my speakers, or I would maybe select my my headphones as another option. And when you're done recording it, like, so if I were to record what I'm doing right now, talking, blah, 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 somebody say something and you'll see it.
Hello. Hello.
All right. Well, in theory, that's not going to work. Thank you, Les. But it's probably because I'm
You
using
can finally
Zoom
hear me.
Now we can hear you, Les. Yay. So say I just recorded a little audio, you would see this bouncing some yellow down here. And when it would be done, it would send it to recording, to like a recordings option that would allow me to push it into iTunes or push it as a separate file right to my desktop. Audio Hijack has a ton of short little YouTube clips that show you how to do basics in there. So I send you in that direction for that kind of stuff. The other thing I wanted to mention really quick too is that, again, on that programmer section of the website, there's a link to a separate Google Drive that has things like show promos, legal IDs. That's the place you would go to find those files as exclusively remote DJs, and it's listed as such on that programmer section of the website as well. Tonio, you've got your hand up for a while now. Coming to you. He gave up on us. All right, Tony, while we're waiting for you to come back, if you still got a question, any other questions from folks?
I was just muted.
Oh,
I forgot about that. I was muted. For people who are not cool enough to have Macs, there's a program called Internet Download Manager that I purchased about 10 years ago for $30, lifetime upgrades and updates. And with it, you can download audio and video off of any website. And one of the features that I love most about it is that everything that you download from it gets saved in its own separate file. So if you're ever wondering where the hell that thing you downloaded is, you know exactly where to go. And it's all listed in chronological order. And this has been one of my headaches in terms of finding things on my computer. And this puts it all in one place, but it also gives you access to audio. And I've used this for my show when I've done mixed audio stuff. You can download music, talks, and if you're downloading a video, there are lots of programs to convert video to just audio and then take a snippet out of that. And that's what I've done.
Tonio, what was the name of the program again?
Internet Download Manager.
Great, thank you. All right, any other questions from folks?
I don't have a
Okay.
question,
Yeah,
but thanks for the all the information. I guess my experience is after doing a few shows, I pretty much expect to make mistakes. You know, I at first I get so flustered and frustrated, I'd want to throw the laptop out the window. And then I'd take maybe a few minutes and come back to it. And usually, not usually, it's always something I've done wrong that, you know, I just missed, as you probably noticed on this Zoom call. But yeah, it can be frustrating, but it is so rewarding. I mean, I retired and I started doing radio a few years ago, and this is the highlight of my life. It really is. So thanks, everybody.
should have recorded that for the drive list. That's a great, yeah, this is what it's about, is having fun and leaning into your learning edge here. And I'm telling you, once you get the hang of it, and especially if you're doing live as well, it's going to feel the same kind of way. You're going to have that like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I can't, you know, it feels like you're doing this, like, I don't know, like you're conducting orchestra is often what I encourage people to think about, is that you're keeping a lot of things in place, but it's just focus on the next thing. And I encourage you to also think about that with doing remote shows. Just focus on the next thing, the track that's right in front of you, the next one that's coming in, and you'll see that it all comes together as like a final piece. And again, listening back is the best way to figure out what you want to tackle first and what you want to tweak. And everybody that, all the shows you hear now, David's show, even my show, Tonio, Peter, we've all been doing it for a long time. It takes a while to get, and even Les, I've heard Les's shows too. Like it takes a while to get to that point, but it's not as far away as you think. 4 or 5 shows in, you're going to start to feel that flow, and you'll be like, this is what they were talking about in these trainings. Okay, now. And I got to tell you, even now today, I still have a flub on the air. Like I still push the wrong button and something plays over or something like that. So that to me is what the big difference between community radio and corporate radio is about. We are not about perfection. That's a, you know, again, a myth of our culture that perfection is something to strive for. We're striving for good radio, and good radio is real radio and human radio. And I just want to keep emphasizing that. No one's going to come after you if you have a little dead air, if you've got like, you know, levels a little bit all over the place. We know that this is a learning process. So with that, does anyone want to take the final question or have the final word here, or anything else to say for the good of the group here? Yeah, Damien.
Yeah, it's, I guess, not really related to the content we've covered for your final instructional video, but I was wondering about the listserv thing that I've heard you mention a few times. Is that actually just the email list that I've been participating in with you? It is.
Yeah. Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm sorry. And you said when we want to do a programmer login on the WGDR website, that somewhere on the listserv you gave us information to actually log in. That was the thing that I wasn't sure about.
Yeah. So in the chat, I just popped the email address that is the listserv. So it's a two-way street. Mostly I'm the one who drives a lot. I take up a lot of the road just because I'm trying to keep everybody driving in the same direction, if you will, to take that analogy one step further. And mostly I'm like, hey, something's broken, or heads up about, you know, something, but it is a two-way street. So that's where people can ask for subs or share new resources or ideas. We ask, again, people to be really mindful about not overloading each other with email. So make it count if you're going to email it. And as far as the programmer section of the website, so if you went to WGDR.org, and let me just pull that up so I can share it, and you scroll to the bottom, there is a specific page that's for programmers. It's linked at the bottom, but this is the direct link in the chat. And if you click on that, it's going to come to a login page, and the password for that is WGDR 2022. And that's what's going to take you to what you saw briefly in the training tonight, which is a part of our website that has a ton of different links. So it's like the video links for these different trainings. It's the station manual PDF. It's links to download Audacity. It's the Creative Commons links and things like that. So hopefully you'll find what you're looking for there. And honestly, I keep adding to it. You know, as questions come up, I keep putting the resources on there. I'll put Tonio's suggestion of internet download as a program. I'll put audio hijack up there just as options for people to explore if they want. Tonio, I see your hand again. I think you're still muted.
Okay, I just want to share a quick tip for anybody who intends to record conversations like through Zoom or Skype or something like that, that the trick for many of us up here who don't have really fast internet service or limited bandwidth, the trick is to turn off the video function, because video uses up a ton of bandwidth and audio uses much less. So you'll have much better audio quality if you and your guest are just doing audio.
And I also recommend that you use headphones and an onboard mic because it'll make it a much more rich sound. You can do it just like without anything plugged in, but you'll start to pick up a little bit of room audio. And even if you think it's quiet, trust me, you'll listen back and be like, that damn cat just meowed in the background again, or whatever it is. So this really takes away a lot of the guesswork of, is it quiet enough and can I hear what I'm doing? And it doesn't have to be more fancy than an earbud and an onboard mic, or there's a lot of headphones at this point that also are just regular headphones with, if you see something like this, like a little, blip on your cord here, that's a microphone. And it just picks up a nice audio. It's almost like wearing a lapel mic if you're on a camera or doing video, because it picks up that warm sound that's coming actually out of your chest. Not to get too geeky here about audio, but good mics matter. Yeah. All right, everyone. You are troopers.
What is that headset that you're using?
I mean, again, I'm not trying to oversell Mac, but these are the little earbuds that come with a Mac. They used to come with a Mac. They don't give you anything anymore, by the way, if you buy anything new. But 15 years ago when I got my first Mac, these things still work as like headphones and a little onboard microphone here. But they sell these as well. Like it's just regular earbuds with a little onboard mic. They come commonly with smartphones because that's also how you can talk hands-free for a lot of people too.
Because they seem to be much better at getting a good recording without all that extra noise that a lot of the other earbuds have.
Yep. And now I will have Mac underwrite the rest of CVCR's budget for the year because I've brought them up so many darn times in tonight's training. So again, everybody, thank you so much for giving so much time to the station for the last couple of weeks. This is the final official training piece for the remote made side of things. Again, your next step is to go out and make one. And again, David and I are happy to, I'm sure Tonio even will be happy to listen back a little bit and give you some feedback if you're looking for it. But you and I will have a one-on-one check-in when you tell me that you're feeling ready, and we'll find you a time to get on the air. So have a lovely rest of your night, and we will see you in the next steps. Bye, everybody. Thank you.